classmates and my mentor for all of the time they dedicated to helping me polish up this thesis, and to Mrs. Lambert for her endless patience and kindness. Imagine Gunnar, an average 18-year-old high school graduate. In high school, he hung out with people he called his friends, but he didn't really know them. Twice a week after school, he would meet with his therapist to discuss his depression and anxiety. Several of his friends also visited therapists, but they never discussed it together. They merely mentioned it as their pity card every once in a while. Now that they are off at college, he doesn't talk to them anymore. After spending a summer working a part-time job and doom scrolling, he headed off to community college, looking forward to the average dorm experience and doing as little work as possible. Gunnar's experience was as unfulfilling as it sounds. His life had no meaning, but he never cared to change it. This is a hypothetical story, but is the experience of many young adults in America. In 1847, 9-year-old William Hockett and his family were braving the brutal quest to the Promised Land, Oregon. In the midst of the Pioneer Age, Americans faced unimaginable horrors, a shocking amount of which fell upon children. Both William's parents passed away due to typhus, leaving his older sister, only 16, to take charge. She led William and his 2 brothers, the youngest of whom was only a toddler, all the way to Oregon. When they reached their destination, she made sure that each of her siblings was given to a different family who could take care of them. This story is not unlike many other horrors of the pioneer days. Despite the perils surrounding these youths, necessity drove them on. In the medieval world, children were thought of as miniature adults. Immediately after infancy, they were integrated gradually into adult life. This idea continued up until 1941, when the word teenager emerged in print for the first time. It became popular with businesses in the 1950s, who found that teenagers were a very desirable clientele. They had lots of time and money, and their one goal seemed to be fitting in and having fun. Schools also changed in this era. During the Great Depression, due to the scarcity of jobs, school age was extended to 18 so that young men would not take jobs away from older men, changing into the system that we use today. Throughout history, poor, middle class, and even wealthy children were given only what was necessary for their work. Few were given the vast expanse of knowledge like we have access to today. The National Library of Medicine cites that 84% of youth worldwide, aged 16 to 24, experience anxiety about climate change, with 45% saying it affected their daily lives. Another study found that 52% of youths were hesitant to have kids because of these anxieties. We face much different problems than those of our ancestors. For most young adults, our urgent problems are getting through school or finding a job that provides a substantial income. We are blessed to live in a society where we can focus on our education and choose a job that we actually enjoy. But is all this change for good? Adolescence has been defined as the onset of puberty around 12, all the way to age 34. For the purposes of this paper, I will be using the label young adults in reference to a much more focused age range of 17 to 25-year-olds. And Gen Z are all the people ages 14 to 29. The way that children and young adults have handled maturing into adulthood has changed a lot through the ages. Because of this drastic shift, young adults are falling short of what they could be, and it is almost entirely their own fault. Young adults are avoiding the responsibilities of adulthood and not taking initiative in their lives. First, kids and teens are being influenced by mature and inappropriate content online. There are many ways this can happen, such as pornographic content or experiencing cyberbullying. Another of these influences is best shown by the Sephora Tweens trend. In late 2023, a number of preteen girls were showing up at Sephora and causing a ruckus. People started to notice that these children were buying wrinkle prevention and anti-aging products. At only ages 9 through 12, these products could be harmful to them because they were designed for adults whose skin is biologically thicker and less sensitive. The girls saw the obsession over skincare on social media platforms, so they assumed it was something that they also had to do. Without maturity to discern that they were too young for these products, they took to the aisles of Sephora. Without maturity, nothing good can come from the internet. This applies to adults just as much as preteens. We can easily stumble when constantly being fed curated social media feeds. We should never believe the lie that we have learned all there is to know. Be critical thinkers and not just consumers of ideas. Another way that young adults are growing up in the wrong way is by becoming pleasure seekers. Everyone has heard the phrase, enjoy it while you can. We have been graciously given each stage of our lives by God, so we should be grateful and enjoy each one. However, we should not get so caught up in the enjoyment of right now that we forget our purpose or our responsibilities. Our lives should not be structured around fun or even happiness. Instead, we should strive for the perfect joy of the Lord. Sometimes this might look like having fun. Other times, it might look a little more like Hebrews 11, being persecuted and ridiculed for his name. By faith, we can walk the path he has set before us. Next, friendship is the best kind of therapy. An American Time Use survey cited that there has been a 45% decrease in face-to-face interactions since the 2000s, specifically in Gen Z. We are a lonely generation, and instead of building relationships, we have turned to everything else to try and fill the void. Over 7 million teens ages 10 to 19 attended therapy this year. In an article from the National Library of Medicine, when patients were prompted with the question, "Why didn't you take this to your friends?" the most common response was, "What friends?" The author's hypothesis is that an increasing demographic of people in therapy are using it more as an outlet for friendship rather than help with a severe mental health challenge. Quote, "We need to remind our patients and ourselves that an important goal of therapy is to make it possible for patients to experience that same satisfaction, that same experience of being thoroughly known by another outside of the therapy relationship." End quote. In her book, Bad Therapy, Abigail Schreier said about therapists, quote, "Though they may seem like your friend, your therapist will not force you to sing karaoke on your 21st birthday just because they love you. She won't hop on a plane to fly to your bachelorette just to toast your misadventures and stand by your side at your wedding, tearfully holding a bunch of peonies. She may promise to understand you, but let's face it, your therapist will not be prized from her hourly billing to celebrate the birth of your child just because it feels so monumental that one of you had a baby." End quote. Having somebody who is paid to listen to you moan about your life may feel good, but in the end, even if they have a shiny plaque on the wall, it is not true friendship. Friendship has been vastly underrated in our culture today. A friendship involves not only one person listening, but a mutual lending of the ear and giving of advice, building each other up, and when necessary, bringing each other down a few pegs. A good friend will tell you when you are being selfish and narrow-minded. They will give hugs and pray for you in a way that a therapist never could. Proverbs 27:17 says, "As iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend." Having relationships and holding on to them gives us a purpose outside of ourselves to think about. As a society, we have been lazy with all our relationships, but we cannot reap benefits without commitment. My next claim is that kids are growing up far too slowly in the right ways, such as the ability to take responsibility, work hard, handle relationships, and have adult interactions. During World War II, kids went to school faithfully. Their teachers continued to teach them. While the entire world seemed to be falling apart around them, they kept going. In contrast to this, when Donald Trump was elected for his second term in November of 2024, college students nationwide suffered mental health breakdowns. Multiple colleges offered self-care spaces with snacks and coloring books to help students cope with the results. Many young adults were never allowed to fall or fail as kids. Now, they are too scared to let it happen. Abigail Schreier, in her book, Bad Therapy, dedicated a section to this idea that college students are not able to function without their mothers holding their hands. They don't want to take responsibility because they've never had to before. As much as we would like to let our parents hold us up, we have to learn to walk on our own 2 feet. Another way that young adults continually push away responsibility is instead of pursuing families when they are young, they convince themselves they are not ready. There has been approximately a 28% decrease in marriage since the 1960s in people ages 25 to 34. This may not seem important, but we are talking about 48% of people in their prime years who are convinced they are not ready to start families. The longer people wait, the more they become set in their ways. Instead of people building their lives together, they find it very hard to live with somebody when they've lived independently for a decade or more. Not everybody is going to be married by the time they are 30, but that doesn't mean that people should push away the pursuit of marriage entirely until then. We are never truly prepared for major life changes. That is why we need to continually rely on God's perfect plan for our lives. Whatever our reservations, He will provide for us in ways we would never expect, just like He is doing in our lives already. 2 Corinthians 9:8, and God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. As a culture, we have made it appropriate to do as little work as possible. As stated by AT&T Mobile, just okay is not okay. When did we start thinking that it was a good thing to put in just enough work to get just as much done as necessary? We waste a lot of time, mainly because we have a lot of time to waste. Especially at a young age, we aren't supporting families or even ourselves financially. Yet, even people with small children find time to waste. In his book, The Anxious Generation, Jonathan Haidt talks about the damage it does to children to have to compete for attention from their parents, who are glued to devices. Similarly, the American Academy of Pediatrics stated that on average, 13 to 18-year-olds spend 8 hours and 39 minutes daily on screens. We can try and justify this time, but in the end, what did we gain? My last claim is that we are not making an effort to use the time instead of wasting it. The Making Caring Common project by Harvard stated that 3 in 5 people ages 18 to 25 feel their lives lack meaning or purpose. N.D. Wilson said in his book, Notes from a Tilt-A-Whirl, Christianity is no longer about changing the world. Christianity is no longer about facing the darkness and walking into the shadow with souls full of light. We don't see evil as a thing to be conquered. We don't see life as a story with any kind of arc. End quote. Secular culture is a reflection of Christian culture. The fact that purposelessness is so deeply rooted in our society today proves this quote is accurate. Someday, we will be the people running homes, businesses, and this country. If we focused more on being productive instead of just filling spaces, I think we would find ourselves a lot more fulfilled. Proverbs 6:6-8 instructs us, Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider her ways and be wise, which having no captain, overseer, or ruler, provides her supplies in the summer, and gathers her food in the harvest. As Christians, we should want to be productive, hardworking, and purposeful people, because we know our ruler. However, nobody can be fulfilled climbing the corporate ladder if they are working for themselves. To quote my pastor, we choose meaninglessness so we can do whatever we want. By God's grace, we can pursue our purpose. College is another place where we can waste time. As I stated previously, high school was originally extended in the United States to keep young men out of the workforce. Though it didn't start this way, I believe college has turned into a similar prolongation of young adulthood, keeping young men out of the workforce and giving them an excuse for not being able to collect their lives. 80% of college students change their degree at least once. Changing one's degree is not necessarily a bad thing, but when we look at the vast number of people who change their degree multiple times, it suggests that people aren't entering college with purpose. We should not go to college to discover why we're at college. My last point regards a question that we do not ask enough. Who do you want to be when you are old? If you wait until you are retired to figure this out, you are going to be in a pinch. If we want to be an old person who is able to reminisce about memories with kids and grandkids, we have to have those kids and raise them. Being wise will not magically happen when our first grandchild is born. It will require putting thought into our lives and not just letting it slip by mindlessly. We need to practice the qualities and life skills that will make us patient, hardworking, disciplined, and loving. Even if God never calls us to be married or have kids, those qualities will be a lifelong service to us. Now I will address an argument people may have against my proofs. Many may say that America is not a place that is financially friendly to youth. This is partially valid, but I would say that living is never financially easy. To make a substantial income, you will have to work hard, and that is not a bad thing. There are also a lot of things that we, as first world residents, see as a necessity that are really not necessary for living. For instance, we don't need a TV, streaming services, a huge closet, or fancy cars, houses, and phones. In general, the best way to combat the financially hostile world is to work hard and be diligent in things that are more important than money. Proverbs 10:4 says, "Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth." In this paper, I have argued that young adults have not taken initiative in their lives because they have been influenced by a digital world and become addicted to pleasure. Second, I argued that young adults have been lazy in their jobs, their school, and their relationships. They've dodged responsibility, doing just enough to get by. Third, I argued that young adults have no purpose in their lives and are wasting time instead of bettering themselves. They claim there is no purpose in working hard and nothing worth being diligent in. At the beginning of this thesis, I relayed the hypothetical story of Gunnar, the college student whose life meant nothing to him. His aspirations for life were simply to do as little work as possible. Let's take a different look at his life. What if instead of having base level friendships in high school, he sought out relationships that were fruitful and put in work to keep them? He probably would have spent less time venting to his therapist about how lonely he felt. He probably would have cared more about staying in touch, resulting in less loneliness when friends moved away to college. What if he cared enough about work to find a job that he actually enjoyed doing? Maybe he'd still go to college, but with a goal in mind, with a plan and a purpose, and in the end, have a happier life. What did it take for this change? Being proactive and not passive in his life. Of course, the key ingredient in this mixture is God, who gives us our purpose in life. It might not be clear exactly where the road is taking us at first, but we know where it ends. God will use us for his glory. So learn to see the story he put you in and work to become the character that you want to be in that story. Take responsibility and know your purpose.
Now we will spend 10 minutes in a question and answer period just to further explore with Anna the argument that she's just made for us. So, is there anyone who'd like to start us off with a question? Yes, Abigail.
What made you want to choose this topic?
Funny you should ask. I actually didn't have this picked out at the beginning. I was kind of going between a lot, but from my peers, I got a lot of people saying that they wanted to hear about this, so that's pretty much it.
Yes, welcome.
Do you think at SCCS we should adopt the model where it's what you were talking about before, 1941, where you hit like a certain age and then you're an adult quicker?
I think it depends. I think we'd have to work backwards a lot from that, just because of where we are right now. But yeah, I think if we try to mature kids faster in some ways and get people out and working and taking responsibility earlier instead of them just like doing nothing all the time, wasting time, finding ways to waste time.
Yes.
Do you think the word teenager was overall good for America?
In some ways, because I think that there is definitely separation between childhood and adulthood, but I think that it emphasized that too much. So yeah, in some ways it has helped, but in definitely a lot more ways it has hindered.
Great. Yes, Benjamin.
How do you think a high school student should balance like extracurriculars, like playing sports and stuff like that, like enjoying high school and also like working towards his future? Because I think many times people tend to lean on one or the anything but work, or do everything but work? And how do you think like a healthy balance should look like?
That's hard. I think it changes for people, but one of the ways that best prepares you for being a father someday is also spending time with family and spend time in a church community. So making space for that as well will also help you, not just getting a job.
So what age do you think that adolescents should become adulthood?
I don't know. I didn't really think about that too much. I think it probably does change for everybody, honestly, and just even girls and boys mature at different ages, so that changes it too. So I don't think there's really a specific age.
Do you think that any of these problems with young adults, like not being able to take responsibility or be productive, do you think that any of those could have stemmed with parents, in like parenting styles?
Yes, it definitely has. There's a lot of things that come from that, but because that's such a big topic, I didn't want to focus on that as much, but it definitely has come from that partially. Yeah, I just wanted to focus more on this of young adults, even if you were raised badly, like that still, you have to take responsibility for that at some point, so, yeah.
Yes, Mr. Clara.
To what degree do you think the non-productivity, antisocialness stuff is a non-Christian cultural problem versus a Christian cultural problem?
Honestly, I think that it is a Christian problem just as much as non-Christian, partially because of like social media and stuff, like I said. It's something that is really a part of society and culture, which I said in here, I think that the Christian culture affects secular culture, so we're kind of both rubbing off on each other in some ways. So I think it's just as much a problem for Christian culture too.
Do you think that being purposeful and productive in your life looks different for young men versus young women? And if so, like what are the differences, would you say?
Yeah, so kind of similar to what I said to Ben, I think that for young men it is important to go out and work, but also part of the, maturing into adulthood for women, just because so many of us will end up being in the home with children someday, that, spending time in a church community or with family or things like that are important experiences too, so.
Mr. Harkin.
So, you talked about growing up and, getting rid of the teenage thing, and there's, of course, a lot of things, junior high, high school kids are involved in. So with that, as a mom someday, what age would you give your son a cell phone? And why?
Honestly, it depends on maturity and how much time they're gonna be spending outside of the house. Like, if they're just gonna be at the house all the time, they don't need it. But if they're gonna be, I don't know, playing sports or something where they're gonna be traveling out of town, that would impact the decision on that.
You avoided the question, but that's okay. Because you say waste time versus work, okay? So that's kind of where I was trying to drill down on, the phone getting in the way of the work. So, how would you respond to that? Like, you wanted to work hard, right? Earn money and learn what a blister is?
Yeah, so I don't really know how else to answer that, but basically if the phone is getting in the way, then take it away.
Mr. Moss.
So Anna, up until very recently, human purpose has derived a lot from survival or innovation or exploration. Now, would you say that the level of comfort that we experience as Americans has been detrimental to our sense of purpose?
Yes, because like, I think I kind of mentioned this in here, like, similar to gentle parenting, the comfort is like the most important thing, and that's not the most important thing. So, if we're always focused on the thing that's most comfortable, that's gonna get in the way of, like, our actual purpose.
Hannah, do you think you and your peers are aware of this problem? Or is it more the grown-ups who are like,
I think sometimes. I think it's something that we forget. We are aware of it, but yeah, like when we're wasting time, when we're on our phones, it's easily forgotten.
Yeah, Jared.
How would you respond to a person who wants to put off getting married or raising a family because of financial reasons, because they want to save up money? Are you okay with that, or how would you respond to that?
Kind of depends on the situation. Like, I don't think in our society there's not that much getting in the way of you making money. If your job isn't giving you enough money, pick up another job, work in a new job, find ways to get out there and make more money, and not just say, well, I don't make enough money, too bad.
So with the world encouraging children to just enjoy life and to, do things that are fun and pleasurable, how would you as a parent raise up a kid who, like, wants to work hard and, like, for instance, so you have a kid who's very lazy minded, like, would you take the forceful parent approach and force them to work or do things like that, or are there practical steps that you would have, like, as a parent to encourage a hardworking child in the midst of a world that, wastes time?
I think there's actually a couple ways to do that. One, lead by example. Two, like an allowance. I don't know how many people have got just like a free allowance, but growing up, I have always had to work for an allowance, so doing jobs around the house or something, which gives you work to do, and it's not easy, and then you get rewarded for that, which helps it kind of build up in you. But yeah, just probably leading by example more than anything else, being somebody who is a hard worker with purpose.
So you talked about how people are replacing friendships with therapy. Do you think that therapy is also having negative effects on friendships because it's causing young adults specifically to victimize themselves?
Yeah, for sure. I've never been to therapy, so I can't say from personal experience, but I know that a big thing in therapy is